I'm an artist here at Zieler Art Supplies. Over the course of these 3 acrylic classes, I'm going to be guiding you through the world of acrylic painting. I'm using the Zieler acrylic bundle pack here, which comes with everything you need to get started in acrylics. So whether you just haven't painted in years or you've never painted before, during these 3 classes you will learn different styles and different project ideas to inspire you to get painting. So in this first class we're going to be doing some really fun, easy painting skills that will help to get you started. So I'm going to be using the bundle pack, which comes with my acrylic paper. So it's important when you are painting with acrylics to use a good quality paper that's nice and thick and has some texture, which can hold the acrylic paints. Then also I've got the Zieler 10-piece acrylic paint pack. So these tubes are ideal, good range of colours to get started with, and also the 5-piece brush set. So some good different shaped brushes there. And I am using the A3 table easel, which I find is really comfortable for when you're working, so you don't have to bend over your table, you can sit up straight, which is really handy. Some other household objects I'm using is masking tape, so this is really helpful to tape our paper down and keep it in place while we're painting, and it leaves a nice border when you finish. And then I just have an old glass jar which I use to put my water in. And for this class I've got some string, so just any old household string will do, and a comb. So let's get started and see what we can create. So to begin with, we're just going to do a really fun warm-up that helps you to get used to using the acrylic paints. So I always tape down my paper, and this helps to keep it in place and will also give us a nice border when we finish. So adding a fine layer of white paint onto the canvas just helps to keep the paper nice and fluid. So here I'm just adding pea-sized dollops of paint across the edges of the paper. You can choose whichever colours you like for this. If you find that your layer of white paint has dried into the paper, you can just add a little fine layer before we start mixing in our colours together. Now you can spread the dollops of paint across the page, one line after the other, and you'll start to see a really interesting pattern forms. This can be really fun and good to experiment with using your paints. Now using the fat flat brush, I'm going to do the same thing again, and you can start to see the layers of colour deepen. Back to using the smaller flat brush, I'm going to continue with the same movements, and the more we move around the paint you'll start to see the layers of different colours underneath starting to show through. You can do this as many times as you like, just experimenting and playing around with what textures you can make. Here I'm using a cotton bud to draw interesting squiggles in the paint. You'll see it removes the layer of the paint showing the white underneath. Once this is dry, you can then gently peel off the tape and it reveals a really nice fresh border. So on the tape I still have lots of paint left, so I'm going to do another canvas. Adding a little bit more colour and using the paint that's already there, I'm going to follow a similar process. If you add tape onto the page, this will mask out the area and leave it white, so you can play around and experiment with creating different shapes in doing this. It's really good just to have a go with the acrylic paint, seeing all the different textures you can form to get used to using them. You can use string to make some really interesting and cool shapes and effects. So to do this, I'm just using some little glass jars to mix up some paint with a little bit of water. You want it at a slightly fluid consistency, so just a few drops of water into the paint. So not too runny, but not too thick. You'll need a white and then a couple of colours of your choice. I'm going to use purple and red. So then with a fresh piece of acrylic paper, tape this down to a hard surface. Then cut a little length of string and place these into the coloured paint pots, and then give it a mix around so the string is fully coated. Using the white paint, spread a layer of this onto your paper. Then you simply get the string and place this onto your paper in a random formation and slowly pull and watch as the paint all spreads with the string on the wet white paper. You can do this as many times you like using the other colours and even using more white if you'd like it a little bit lighter. Here I'm going to do the same process but using a different colour, so this time I'm choosing a turquoise background. So using these colours, it looks a little bit like an under the ocean scene with lots of seaweed. So afterwards, I've just got some acrylic paint pens and drawn some little fish onto it. Here is a different process to making the string art, by folding the paper and applying pressure instead of adding a layer of white. You can create some really interesting textures by using a comb to move the paint around on your page. Simply choose some colours and put some blobs of paint onto your page. Then use the comb at about a 45-degree angle to push and wiggle the paint into the page. So you can use this effect in different ways to create little paintings. So here I'm creating a sea from above scene, using dark blues and turquoise and white to create that effect of the ocean lapping up on the shore. So starting by painting my little patch of sand, using a tiny bit of yellow orchid mixed in with a lot of white. So using that process, blob some paint onto the page. Here I've used turquoise, light blue and dark blue and white, and then wiggle with the comb. The more you wiggle the comb, the more the colours will blend together, so you can do this as many times as you like. Then using a little fine liner pen, I've drawn on some little baby turtles as though they're scurrying up the sand into the ocean. Using fine liners can be really good to use over the top of acrylic when you want to add in finer details. Experimenting with different ways to use the comb and the texture to create pieces of art. Here I'm using a fine liner to illustrate out a lady's face, and then I'm going to use the cone technique to create the texture in her hair. Enjoyed today's class and got some fun project ideas that you can start and do at home to have a little bit of fun with your acrylic paints. On next week's class, we're going to be going through a bit more colour techniques, brush techniques, and also painting on fabric. So just consider when you're tidying away, be careful not to get any paint onto clothes that you don't want to get ruined, because acrylics don't come off clothes or your carpet or anything like that. And also when you're cleaning your brushes, make sure you clean them thoroughly in some water and don't leave any paint on the bristles or else it will harden and stiffen the brush. One other thing is don't leave your brushes overnight in water upside down or else it will bend the bristles and ruin your brushes. So there's just a couple of little tips just to take care with your acrylic paints to make your things last longer. Also when you're starting out and we're using this acrylic paper, another thing to think of is you can cut it in half like I've been doing if you want to work a little bit smaller. And also while you're practicing, and if it's not a piece you want to keep, you can flip it over and work on the back. So you just make the most out of all your products. But I hope you enjoyed today's class and I'll see you next week.